Welcome back to another episode of Consciously Clueless. I'm your host, Carly, and I'll be your guide on this journey from consciousness to cluelessness and back around again. Thanks for joining me for another Sunday solo episode. Whether it's Sunday night, you're getting ready for your week, it's Monday morning, you're on your way to work, or whatever day this podcast has found you, I'm really glad you're here. I haven't done this for a few weeks, but I'm going to read a review of the week tonight before we get started. This review is from Uni, who I interviewed a few months ago on the podcast. Totally give that episode a listen. It is a 5-star review titled Fun, Vulnerable, and Great Values. Carly's voice is smooth and reassuring, and the podcast feels easy to listen to. But the best part is she is emotionally open about difficult subjects and blends together compassion, wellness, along with justice for humans and non-humans. Definitely worth listening to. Thank you so much for that review. It truly means the world. Okay, so today, while I'm recording this, is Valentine's Day. There seems to be a camp of either loving or hating Valentine's Day. Or I guess there's maybe some in-between spaces, but when you talk to people, it's either like, oh, I love it, oh, I hate it. I love the concept. I love the concept of celebrating love. I do think it's been co-opted by our capitalist society to make people feel guilty for not doing enough, not spending enough money, it's super wasteful, all those negative things. But the concept about love and that being celebrated, I think is absolutely freaking beautiful. So I want to talk about a type of love that gets thrown around, I think, in the wellness space and more in general conversation, this idea of loving ourselves. You know, there's that, like, if you don't love you, how can anybody else? Or self-care, self-love. And sometimes I think it gets thrown out there as maybe like a buzzword, kind of like self-care, but self-love. Really loving ourselves. It gets thrown out there, but it's one of those things that irritates me because it's thrown out as a buzzword, but what does it mean? What does it mean to show up for ourselves? What does it mean to love ourselves? What does it mean to be in relationship with ourselves? That is important. And that is a detailed conversation that is more than an Instagram post about loving yourself or whatever. And those can be important when they remind us of loving ourselves, checking in with ourselves. But I just mean we need to really talk about what that looks like. Because we don't teach people very well, at least, in our society about truly loving ourselves. Beyond taking care of our physical body or our mental health, but what does it mean to just like baseline love yourself? That is a really difficult thing for a lot of people. And it ebbs and flows throughout the different phases of our life, I would say, or at least it has for me and how I've looked at it and how I've felt it. So this idea of self-love, if it makes you roll your eyes and you think it's total bullshit, I get it. I totally get it. It sounds really corny, like, oh, you're just supposed to love yourself. And I mean, I understand. I totally understand. But like, let's think about it for a minute or two here. What does it mean to love yourself? Maybe you're listening and you honestly have no idea. Maybe you're listening and you are like, I've never considered that question, and I don't know what it means to love myself. That's okay, but also dive into that a little bit. Dive into that. Maybe the way you love yourself is evolving. Maybe the way you show yourself love, the way you think of yourself as a being that is worthy of love, maybe that's new. Or maybe it's something that you felt really connected to years ago and you've lost it a little bit. You got lost in a relationship, you got lost in a job, you got lost in a phase of life where you stopped really being conscious of the fact that you needed to give yourself love. And that can mean anything from, physically loving on ourselves, taking care of our bodies, mentally loving ourselves, taking care of our minds, but also just thinking of ourselves as I love myself. Not in this cocky way, but really just being able to say that. Yeah, I love myself. I love how hard I am trying at this thing called life. I love that I keep showing up day after day, even though it's really hard. Whatever it is, insert what phrase comes to mind for you. But can you really love yourself? And there's a reason I think that it becomes this like laughable, corny sounding thing, because then we don't have to deal with it, right? If we can laugh it off and be like, haha, yeah, do I love myself? We don't really have to like answer the question. We don't really have to deal with that. Or we don't really have to examine what that means for us. But the more I start to learn about whether it's mental health or physical health or sexual health, if you don't love yourself or know what you need in any of those categories, it is really hard to communicate that to someone. It's harder to set boundaries. It's harder to know what you need and how to ask for it, and to understand that you should ask for it. All those things are totally connected. So I want you to think about this idea of loving yourself, and not for any reason too. That's the thing is, yes, there's so many reasons I love myself, and I just listed some examples, but also not tying your love of yourself, that self-worth or whatever it is, to an accomplishment. I love myself because I got that work promotion. Like, no, that shouldn't be tied to it. You can be really proud of yourself. That can be one part of why you love that you're a go-getter and you worked hard and you manifested that job change. But you should love yourself even if you didn't get it. Loving yourself even when you're heartbroken and you're a mess and you need help. Because if you can practice loving yourself when it's easy, then you can call upon it when life gets hard. It's hard to know what loving yourself and giving yourself that care feels like if you're starting when you're in the bottom of the pit. It's easier to tap into those feelings when maybe you're middle of the road, or maybe when you're in a really good place, and then you can call upon that later. It doesn't have to be tied to your output as a human. So if you're listening and you are this far into this short episode and you're like, yeah, I'm still not sure if I can connect to that. I'm not sure if I've ever really thought about loving myself, and I'm having a hard time answering that. Or I need a reset. I need a boost. I need a reminder of my worthiness, of my love for myself. Well, I have something for you. I am creating a 7-day self-love reset course. And this is exactly why I created it, because I have been feeling like I needed a reminder. I needed a boost. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to have something that you can always return to, a practice and tools and videos, and just someone else reminding you, because sometimes we don't always listen to ourselves, even though we know what we need. Have someone reminding you. So I am releasing this course. Cross your fingers that I can still stay on this timeline. I got a little bit hung up with some medical stuff lately. But my plan is to release this 7-day self-love reset course on my birthday, February 24th. And I want to make it available for everyone so you can feel that you have someone rooting for you. You have someone encouraging, and we can create this community where we can talk about these things. I'm having a really hard day. I'm having a hard time tapping into self-love. I need some reassurance. And I imagine creating maybe a Facebook group or something for people that have taken the course. And then you can connect further with people that are thinking like this and wanting to dive into this, and it'll be yours. Once you purchase this 7-day course, you'll get something every day from me for 7 days. It's yours. You can always return to it. I don't want it to feel like it expires. I want that to be your experience that you can call upon and then go do it again and go through the 7 days again and maybe learn something else about what you need and how to love yourself. Or maybe it sinks in a little deeper and you believe it a little more. Whatever it is, I want that to be yours for life. So if this is something that sounds like it would be helpful to you, reach out to me at consciouslycarly@gmail.com or my social media, Consciously Carly, Facebook and Instagram, and tell me if this feels like something you are interested in. I want to hear from people if this feels useful, because I am lit up about it. And usually that means somebody, at least one other person, is going to connect to it. And I want to know if that's you. And I want to know if you're excited, if you want to stay in the loop about this release. It's the first thing like this I've ever created, and I am so freaking excited. So is self-love bullshit? No, it's not. It's actually really freaking beautiful. Is how we talk about it bullshit sometimes? Yes. We don't always get into it. We don't dive into it. We laugh it off. We think it's a joke. You can be strong and badass and also be like, yeah, I love myself. Those things are not mutually exclusive. And I want to help you do that. So, if you're at all jiving on this, like I said, reach out to me and I would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to another episode of Consciously Clueless. If you're enjoying this podcast, hit subscribe wherever you're listening. If you want to help me get this into the ears of more listeners, send it to a friend, text it to a family member, share on social media and tag me. Whatever you can do really, really helps me out. To be read on air as a review of the week, head to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. And if you haven't yet, head over to patreon.com/consciouslycarly and check out what I'm doing over there. Until next time.